I stood on the wooden platform of the summit skywalk, holding my breath. My 10-year-old daughter, Lily, was grinning back at me from 20 feet away. She looked so small against the vast backdrop of the mountains, her helmet slightly tilted to the left. This was the soft launch of the adventure park I helped build. As the director of safety, I had spent months agonizing over protocols, but today was supposed to be a celebration. Lily gave me a thumbs up, her little fingers gloved in bright pink. I waved back, feeling a swell of pride. "Ready, Mom?" she shouted, her voice thin in the wind. "Ready, baby. You got this," I yelled back. She stepped off the ledge. For a split second, she soared, the zip line humming perfectly. Then, a sound shattered my world, a loud, metallic snap, like a gunshot cracking through the canyon. The primary cable didn't break, the harness buckle simply disintegrated. I watched in slow motion as the safety line whipped uselessly into the air. Lily's scream pierced the silence, a terrifying, high-pitched shriek that I still hear in my nightmares. She fell 20 feet, crashing onto the jagged rocks below with a sickening thud. I didn't scream. I couldn't breathe. I just ran, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode, as the world around me turned into a blur of panic and dust. For weeks before Lily fell, I was standing in a glass-walled conference room, shaking with rage. Troy, the CEO's nephew and our new VP of operations, sat with his feet up on the mahogany table, scrolling through his phone. He was 28, arrogant, and had never worked a real job in his life. I slammed the procurement file down in front of him. The papers slid across the table, hitting his expensive leather boot. "I am not signing off on these harnesses, Troy," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "They are uncertified imports. They have a 40% failure rate in stress tests. You're trying to save money on the one thing that keeps people alive." Troy laughed, not even looking up from his screen. "You worry too much, Meredith. That's your problem. You're a single mom, so you see danger everywhere. These parts save us $200,000 this quarter. My uncle wants efficiency." "Efficiency isn't worth a life," I snapped back. "I'm the safety director. If I say no, it's a no." He finally looked at me, his eyes cold and empty. "You're an employee, Meredith. You do what you're told, or I find someone who understands the big picture. Don't make me regret hiring you." A week before the accident, I had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I logged into the company's internal procurement system late at night from my kitchen table. I wanted to put a formal block on the order for the cheap harnesses. I typed in my password, ready to fight another battle with Troy. But when the screen loaded, my blood ran cold. The status of the order had been changed from pending to approved. I stared at the screen, confused. I scrolled down to the authorization line. There, in bold digital letters, was my name, Meredith, Director of Safety. The timestamp showed it was signed 3 days ago at 2 a.m. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even been awake at that time. Troy had bypassed my security clearance and forged my digital signature to push the order through. I stormed into his office the next morning. "You forged my signature!" I yelled. He didn't even flinch. He just smiled that oily smile. "You were tired, Meredith. You probably forgot you did it. You've been under a lot of stress lately. Don't go spreading conspiracy theories. It makes you look unstable." I left his office shaking, gaslight and terrified, but I made sure to download the metadata of that signature log to a flash drive before I went home. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. I was covered in dirt from the canyon floor, and there was dried blood on my shirt, my daughter's blood. The doctors had been working on Lily for 6 hours. They said her spine was shattered. They didn't know if she would ever walk again. I sat in the plastic chair, staring at the wall, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. The double doors swung open. I stood up, expecting a doctor. Instead, Troy walked in. He was wearing a sharp suit, flanked by the company's general counsel. He didn't look concerned. He looked annoyed. "Meredith," he said, his voice dropping to a fake whisper. "We need to talk." "Is she okay?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Did you hear anything?" He ignored my question. He signaled the lawyer, who handed me a thick envelope. "We are terminating your employment, effective immediately," Troy said. "For gross negligence. You signed off on faulty equipment. You caused this accident. Security will escort you out if you return to the office." I stared at him, unable to comprehend the evil standing in front of me. My daughter was fighting for her life, and he was firing me to cover his tracks. "You did this," I whispered. "Read the paper," he sneered. "It says you did." The hits kept coming. I sat there holding the termination letter as the hospital administrator approached me. She looked uncomfortable, clutching a clipboard to her chest. "Ms. Meredith," she said softly. "I'm so sorry, but your health insurance has been declined. It shows as terminated as of this morning." "That's impossible," I stammered. "I have coverage." "The system says it was cancelled by the employer," she said. "And because the company is claiming the accident was due to your willful misconduct, their liability insurance is refusing to cover Lily's medical bills right now. You'll need to provide a deposit of $50,000 for the next surgery." $50,000. I didn't have $50,000. I had rent, car payments, and a few thousand in savings. I walked over to the television mounted in the corner of the waiting room. The news was on. Troy was standing at a podium, microphones shoved in his face. "It's a tragedy," Troy told the cameras, looking like he was about to cry. "But this was the result of a rogue employee who ignored our strict safety standards. We are fully cooperating with the investigation." He was painting me as the villain to the entire world. He wasn't just firing me, he was destroying my life so I couldn't fight back. He thought he had buried me. I went home to an empty, silent house. Lily's room was exactly how she left it, her shoes kicked off by the door, her homework spread out on the desk. I collapsed on her bed and sobbed until my throat burned. I wanted to give up. I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. But then, I saw her favorite stuffed bear on the pillow. The one she hugged when she was scared. A fire ignited in my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was pure, white-hot rage. Troy thought he was smart. He thought he was dealing with a tired, broken single mother. He forgot that before I was a safety director, I was an auditor. I wiped my face and walked to my home office. I opened my safe and pulled out the flash drive I had saved that day in his office. I realized something crucial. Troy didn't just forge a signature to annoy me. He forged a safety document that was submitted to the insurance company. If the insurance carrier found out the safety checks were faked, the entire policy would be void. And if the policy was void, the company wouldn't be liable for the millions of dollars in damages. The corporate officers, Troy, would be personally liable. He had just handed me the weapon to kill him. I needed help, so I called Elias. He was an old friend from law school who had turned into a shark of a personal injury lawyer. He met me at a diner far away from the hospital so we wouldn't be seen. I showed him the flash drive with the metadata proving the forgery. Elias looked at it and sighed. "Meredith, this is good, but it's circumstantial. Troy will say you gave him your password. He'll say you authorized him to sign it because you were busy. It's your word against the CEO's son. We need more." "What kind of more?" I asked, gripping my coffee cup. "We need to prove motive," Elias said. "Why did he buy the cheap gear? If he just wanted to save the company money, the board might protect him. But if he did it for himself, that's different." I thought back to the arguments. Troy was obsessed with budget cuts, but he was also driving a brand new Porsche that cost more than my house. I remembered I still had access to his mother's iCloud family sharing account because she was Lily's godmother. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but the password might still work. I opened my laptop right there in the diner. I logged in. The password hadn't changed. I combed through the shared family cloud, looking for anything suspicious. Photos of vacations, receipts for dinners, nothing useful. Then I found a folder labeled renovations. It seemed innocent enough. I opened it. Inside wasn't a contractor's quote for a house. It was a digital receipt for a wire transfer. The receipt showed a transfer of $200,000 from the Adventure Parks account to a company called Apex Gear Solutions for the harnesses. That matched the company books. But then I found a second document, a bank statement for a company in the Cayman Islands also named Apex Gear Solutions. The Cayman statement showed the $200,000 coming in, and then immediately, $10,000 going out to a Chinese factory for a novelty cord. The remaining $190,000 didn't stay in the company account. It was transferred the same day to a personal account. Troy didn't just buy bad gear to save the budget. He bought $10,000 junk, billed the company for the full $200,000, and pocketed the difference. He paralyzed my daughter to steal money. The realization made me nauseous. I wasn't just fighting a bad boss, I was fighting a criminal. I had the digital trail, but Elias said we needed physical proof. We needed to prove that the gear that snapped was actually the novelty cord from the invoice, not the certified safety gear Troy claimed it was. The problem was, Troy had the physical evidence, the broken harness, locked away in the company warehouse. I needed someone on the inside. I thought of Ben. Ben was the warehouse manager. I had hired him 5 years ago when nobody else would because of his criminal record. He was loyal, but he was also terrified of losing his job. I called him from a burner phone. Ben, it's Meredith. Don't hang up. Meredith, I can't talk, he whispered. Troy has security everywhere. He's firing anyone who even says your name. I know, Ben. I need you to do one thing. Are the crates from the shipment still there? They are, he said, his voice shaking. But Troy is coming tonight. He ordered me to incinerate everything. He said it's contaminated material. He's going to burn the evidence, Meredith. Take a picture of the shipping labels, I begged. Before he burns them. Please, Ben. For Lily. I couldn't wait for the picture. I knew if Ben got caught, he wouldn't send it. I drove to the warehouse district at 2 a.m. I parked my car 3 blocks away and hiked through the brush to the back fence of the facility. I crouched in the dark, watching the loading bay. The floodlights turned on. I saw Troy standing there, yelling at 2 workers. They were tossing cardboard boxes into a large industrial incinerator. My heart sank. He was destroying the proof. I watched as box after box disappeared into the flames. Then I saw Ben. He was carrying a heavy binder, the original factory manifesto that comes with every shipment. Troy's back was turned. Instead of throwing the binder into the fire, Ben stumbled and accidentally dropped it into the blue recycling dumpster near the gate. He looked quickly toward the fence, right where I was hiding. He knew I would come. I waited 2 hours until everyone left. I climbed the fence, tearing my jeans and cutting my hand. I dove into the dumpster. It smelled of rotting food and old cardboard. I dug frantically until my fingers brushed against cold plastic. I pulled out the binder. I opened it under the moonlight. There it was, product class, C, non-weight bearing. Decorative use only. I had everything I needed to go to the police, but Elias told me to wait. If you go to the police now, Troy's dad will bail him out, and they'll tie this up in court for 10 years, Elias said. We need to cripple him first. So, I played the mama bear card. I didn't sue the company yet. Instead, I made a copy of the manifesto and the forged signature log. I put them in a plain manila envelope and mailed it anonymously to the company's liability insurance carrier. Insurance companies don't care about loyalty or spin. They care about money. 3 days later, the bomb dropped. The insurance carrier sent a frantic notice to the board of directors. They were freezing the company's assets immediately pending a fraud investigation. They stated clearly that if the safety logs were forged, the policy was void retroactive to the start date. That meant the company couldn't operate. They couldn't make payroll. They couldn't open the gates. And most importantly, Troy's personal credit cards, which were linked to the corporate guarantee, stopped working. I heard through the grapevine that his card was declined at a 5-star restaurant. The first crack in his armor had appeared. The company went into full panic mode. Troy assumed the leak came from the manufacturer in China. He never suspected me because he thought I was too busy crying at Lily's bedside. He called an emergency meeting in his office to purge the servers of any incriminating emails. He didn't know I was watching him. When I packed up my office on that horrible day, I had left a few things behind. One of them was a teddy bear on a high shelf that I told security was just sentimental junk. It wasn't. It was a nanny cam I used to test for the daycare center we were planning. It had a long-life battery and connected to the building's Wi-Fi, which I still had the password for. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, watching the live feed on my phone. Troy was pacing his office, screaming at his IT guy. "Delete everything. Wipe the drives. If the insurance auditors find the email about the shell company, we are dead." He just admitted it out loud. I hit record on my screen. Now I had his voice. The board of directors called an emergency meeting to address the asset freeze. They were terrified. They were losing millions every day the park was closed. They didn't know what was happening. It was time for me to show my face. I put on my best suit. I did my hair. I walked past the security guard at the front desk who was too stunned to stop me. I pushed open the heavy oak doors of the boardroom. The chatter stopped instantly. Troy stood up, his face turning purple. "Get her out of here," he screamed. "She's trespassing." "I'm not trespassing," I said calmly, placing a single photo of Lily in her hospital bed on the center of the table. The tubes, the monitors, her pale face. The board members looked down, uncomfortable. "I'm the reason your assets are frozen," I told them. I sent the evidence to the insurer. I'm not suing the company, and I'm not going to the press, yet. I want one thing. I want Troy to admit what he did, and I want him gone. The chairman, Troy's father, looked at me with cold fury. "You are blackmailing us?" "No," I said. "I'm giving you a chance to save your company from your son." I underestimated them. Troy's father wasn't going to turn on his son that easily. The next day, the counterattack began. Troy leaked a story to a national tabloid. The headline read, "Safety Director was drunk on job during tragic accident." They released a video. It was grainy footage from the staff holiday party 3 years ago where I had tripped over a cable. They edited it, slowed it down, and added a timestamp from the day of the accident. It looked like I was stumbling around drunk while my daughter fell. The public sympathy evaporated instantly. My phone started blowing up with hate mail. People were calling me a monster. Strangers on the internet were saying I deserved to lose my child. It was a coordinated smear campaign designed to destroy my credibility as a witness. If I was a drunk, nobody would believe my evidence about the forgery. I felt the walls closing in. The lowest point came 2 days later. I was at the hospital, reading a book to Lily, who was finally awake but unable to feel her legs. A woman in a gray suit walked in, followed by a police officer. She was from Child Protective Services. "Ms. Meredith?" she asked. "We've received multiple reports regarding your substance abuse and child endangerment. We have a court order to take temporary custody of Lily pending an investigation." I stood up, screaming. "You can't take her. She's injured. I'm her mother." "You're unstable," the officer said, stepping between me and the bed. "Don't make this harder." I watched them wheel my crying daughter out of the room. I fell to the floor in the hallway, broken. I had lost my job, my reputation, my money, and now my child. I called Elias, sobbing. "They're winning, Elias. They have more money, more power. I can't fight them." "That's what they want," Elias said. "They want you to quit. But you have the recording. You have the ace." "I can't use it yet," I whispered. "I need them to think they've won." I executed the hardest part of the plan. I publicly surrendered. I held a press conference outside the courthouse. I looked disheveled and defeated. I read a statement Elias had written. "I am dropping all claims against the company. I apologize for the confusion. I just want to focus on my health." Troy and his father bought it. They thought the CPS tactic had broken me. They thought I was too weak to fight. They celebrated that night. The company stock bumped up slightly. They reinstated Troy, convinced the threat was gone. This was the Trojan horse. I needed Troy to feel safe. I needed him to get arrogant again. Because a man like Troy doesn't stop stealing just because he got caught once. He stops when he thinks nobody is watching. I needed him to make one more transaction to prove the pattern. With the lawsuit dropped, the insurance company hesitantly unfreezed the assets, but they demanded an independent safety auditor to monitor the company for 6 months. The board agreed. They hired a prestigious consulting firm from the city. What Troy didn't know was that the consulting firm was owned by a friend of Elias. And the senior analyst assigned to the account wasn't a stranger. It was me, working remotely under a pseudonym, M. Davis. I had full access to their servers again, legally this time. I watched Troy's emails day and night. For 2 weeks, he was careful. But then, greed took over. The company needed to replace the broken skywalk quickly to save the summer season. Troy put in a rush order for new materials. I watched the procurement log. He created a new vendor, Global Supply Partners. I ran the name. It was another shell company, registered in Delaware this time, but the bank account linked back to the same offshore holding company as before. He was doing it again. He was stealing another $200,000. The monthly board meeting was scheduled for Friday. Troy was going to present his new, safe expansion plan. I told the consulting firm to set up a video link for M. Davis to present the audit findings. The meeting started. Troy was gloating, showing charts and graphs. "As you can see, we are back on track. Revenue is up, and safety is 100%. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. The name M. Davis appeared. "Actually, Troy," I said, my voice booming through the speakers. "That's not entirely true." Troy froze. He knew that voice. The camera turned on. I was sitting in a studio, looking sharp, calm, and very much not broken. "Meredith?" Troy whispered. "What is this?" "This is the audit," I said. "And I'm afraid you failed." Troy didn't panic this time. He doubled down. He pressed a button on the intercom. "Security! Cut the feed!" But the chairman raised his hand. "Let her speak." Troy sneered. "She's a disgruntled ex-employee. She's faking it. I have a witness." He opened the door and pulled Ben into the room. Poor Ben looked terrified. Troy had obviously threatened him. "Tell them, Ben," Troy commanded. "Tell them Meredith told you to plant that fake evidence in the dumpster." Ben looked at the camera, tears in his eyes. She did," he stammered. "Meredith made me do it. She forged the manifesto." The board gasped. Troy smirked at the camera. "See? She's a fraud. Arrest her." My heart broke for Ben, but I knew Troy would do this. That's why I hadn't relied on Ben. "I expected you to blackmail Ben," I said calmly. "That's why his testimony is irrelevant." Troy laughed. "It's your word against mine, and now I have a witness. You're done, Meredith. You're going to jail for corporate espionage." "I don't need a witness, Troy," I said. "I have the money." I clicked a button and the screen changed. It wasn't safety logs this time. It was a complex flowchart of bank transactions. "You see," I explained to the silent room. "I tracked the money you sent to Global Supply Partners yesterday. It went to Delaware, then to the Caymans. But you got sloppy, Troy. You paid your personal expenses directly from that Cayman account." I zoomed in on a specific line item. "Port of Miami, docking fees, yacht the Trojan." You paid the docking fees for your yacht using the money you stole from this company. The yacht is registered in your name. The account is linked to the theft. There is no way to deny it." The room went deathly silent. The chairman stood up slowly. He looked at the screen, then at his son. The undeniable proof was staring him in the face. His son hadn't just cut corners, he had embezzled nearly $500,000 from his own family. "You stole from me?" the chairman whispered, his voice shaking with betrayal. "Dad, it's a mistake," Troy stammered, sweat pouring down his face. "She hacked the bank. She fabricated it." "The IRS doesn't think so," I said. "I submitted this file to the IRS whistleblower program 3 hours ago. Your accounts are already frozen, Troy. All of them." Troy looked around the room. The board members were looking at him with disgust. He realized his father wasn't going to save him this time. The mama bear hadn't just beaten him, she had locked him in a cage. Troy snapped. He grabbed a heavy glass pitcher of water and threw it at the screen, shattering the image of my face. "I'll kill her," he screamed. He bolted for the door. Security tried to stop him, but he shoved past them. He ran down the hallway, taking the stairs 2 at a time. He needed to get out. He needed to get to his offshore accounts before the freeze fully took effect. He fumbled for his phone, trying to transfer funds, but every app showed account locked. He got to his car in the garage. He was hyperventilating. He had nowhere to go. His credit cards were dead. His passport was at his house, which the police would be watching. Then, a twisted idea formed in his mind. He knew where I would be. I wasn't at the studio. I would be at the one place I always was. He peeled out of the garage, speeding toward the hospital. I was waiting in Lily's hospital room. I knew he would come here. A narcissist like Troy always wants the final word. He needed to hurt me one last time. The door burst open. Troy stood there, chest heaving, his eyes wild. He looked deranged. "You ruined my life," he screamed, stepping into the room. "You think you can take everything from me? I'm going to make sure you never work again." I didn't flinch. I sat in the chair next to Lily's empty bed. She was down the hall in physical therapy, safe. "You did this to yourself, Troy," I said quietly. "You hurt my child." "I don't care about your brat," he yelled, lunging toward me. I simply pointed a finger toward the bathroom door. "I know." 2 police officers stepped out of the bathroom, guns drawn. "Troy, get on the ground. Now." Troy froze. He looked at me, then at the cops. He realized it was a trap. I had lured him here. I knew he would violate the restraining order and threaten me. This wasn't just white-collar crime anymore, this was assault and witness intimidation. He tried to run, but the officers tackled him. He screamed and kicked, shouting obscenities. Do you know who I am? I own this town. I held up my phone. I was live streaming the entire thing. The comments were scrolling by faster than I could read, thousands of people watching the arrogant billionaire get taken down by the mama bear. It's over, Troy, I said as they cuffed him and dragged him out. The video went viral within the hour. The narrative flipped instantly. I wasn't the drunk mom anymore, I was the hero who took down a corrupt empire. 6 months later, I walked into the adventure park. It looked different. New signs, new gear, and a new culture. The board had begged me to come back. They knew the only way to save the company's reputation was to put the woman who exposed the corruption in charge. I was the new CEO. I walked to the main platform. Lily was there, leaning on a cane, but standing strong. She smiled at me. Ready, Mom? Ready, I said. I didn't watch her jump this time. We just looked at the view. Later that afternoon, I visited the state penitentiary. I sat behind the glass partition. Troy walked in, wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looked 10 years older. He picked up the phone. What do you want? He rasped. To gloat? No, I said. I slid a piece of paper against the glass. It was a receipt. What is this? He asked, squinting. It's Lily's college tuition, I said. Fully paid. The court awarded us damages from your seized assets. You didn't just pay for her surgery, Troy. You paid for her future. I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for him to respond. I turned my back on him and walked out into the sunshine, finally free.